welcome to this edition of Times Techies Talks. This is the second that we are having in partnership with Accenture, what we call the Drivers of Reinvention in GCCs. And that is what we are going to discuss today, with a little focus this time, a special focus on the growing partnership that GCCs are having with IT and ER&D service providers. There was a time when the two seemed to be almost mutually exclusive, in some cases almost like rivals. But increasingly, the discussion is about how the two can work together to do what could be called best sourcing, and each one doing what they are best at. And so we're going to discuss that with some special focus, but we're going to discuss other things as well in this whole GCC reinvention conversation that across India, I keep saying GCC is one of the best things happening to India right now. And let's keep that conversation going. And for that, we have today with us four really seasoned professionals. We have with us Paul Jeruchimowitz. I pronounce that right?
Very good.
Okay. Paul has been with Accenture for almost 23 years. He heads the GCC practice. We have Lalitha. Lalitha Indrakanti is CEO of Jaguar Land Rover Business Technology Services. And I've known Lalitha for many years now.
Well over a decade.
And you were then with IKEA for a little while, now with JLR for how many years now?
3 years.
3 years, okay. We have Surendra Bashani. Surendra has been with Best Buy for more than 6 years now?
7 years.
7 years almost, right?
Yeah.
And a good part of that in Seattle. But he's been in India now for more than about a year.
About a year.
And heading the GCC practice for Best Buy. Best Buy is the biggest. Is it the biggest consumer electronics retailer in the US? One of the biggest consumer retailers in the US.
It is one of the biggest electronics retailer in the world.
$41 billion is what I
43.
Yeah. 43 billion.
Yes.
Okay. And we have Neil De Silva. Neil is now with ANSR for how many? 3-4 years now, right?
Coming up to 4, actually.
4 years.
Yep.
But you have tremendous experience across KPMG Global Services, Barclays Shared Services, and before that with First Source and GE Capital Business Process Management too.
That's right.
Fantastic. He now leads, he's part of ANSR. ANSR has been bringing, one of the leading companies bringing GCCs into India, providing all kinds of services to help GCCs set up operations in India very quickly. He heads he's the head of client success officer for ANSR. So let me start with you, Paul. GCCs typically tend to be in a place like India, and most are in India. The biggest operations are in India. The global company parent organization is typically in the US or Europe, Japan, whatever. Huge geographical distance. But yet, GCCs are becoming strategically very important for the parent organization. Give us an idea with this kind of geographical distance. How does a GCC ensure that they become strategically important for the enterprise?
Yeah, I'd say it starts first with having a clear and aligned ambition for the role that the GCC is meant to play in the overall enterprise operating model, and then making sure to have the talent and investment to match that clear ambition. So oftentimes we might say we're looking to the GCC to drive innovation or to drive digital adoption and transformation, some ambition that's set at the C-suite, but then maybe we don't, or we find later on, if it's not delivering upon that ambition, that there wasn't the right level of investment in talent and innovation to actually deliver upon that promise. So we have to have clear and aligned ambition across the organization with the investment to match. The second thing is designing for it end to end. So there's thinking through the global talent strategy of the work that's performed in the HQ, that's in the business, that's in the GCC, and redefining the roles that are in each part of it, as well as the metrics and incentives, and really enforcing shared accountability for the success of the GCC. The third one is thinking about full ownership and accountability from the GCC to drive whatever it is, innovation, growth, and efficiency initiative that comes with senior leadership. So different than maybe previous generations where it was a service organization in service to some direction coming from headquarters. Now we're seeing full accountability, or either an extension of a team that has a shared objective, or full accountability with product owners, senior leadership in the GCC. And then even with all of that, there is still an effort and an investment that needs to be made into culture. Culture adoption, culture sensitivity, budgeting for visits, of bringing leaders to do collaboration and design and innovation together here in the GCC. So many of the GCCs I visited just this week are also building a capability in hosting visits from business unit leaders, from C-suite leaders, to not only visit the place, but actually to design the future together in the place. And that also really breaks down any distance
What do they
of
do
culture.
in the centers? What are they building, you said?
No, so it's almost like a capability to host visits.
Host visits.
Right, and not only just visits, but host design sessions, right? So instead of maybe the GCC dialing into a phone or flying to headquarters to do the innovation happens here, and it's thinking about that actually in the business case, that you have the travel budget associated, that you have the experience of welcoming and hosting in it. Earlier this week I visited a life sciences company, and that's really paramount to the building of the connected culture, is that the head of R&D spends time there. They work on things together there because it's part of one team. Why not this office this time and that office next time? That's become more of a connected capability, but you also have to think through, because there is travel budget associated and time out of market, to really be planful about that. But we're seeing that as an important part of, you mentioned distance as part of the question, of breaking down distance. It's just one office in the ecosystem, and this is a place where we co-create or co-innovate together as one team.
And do you see a lot of global companies recognizing the importance of all of these things just mentioned?
Yeah, well, I think it's those that are doing well or not doing well, but also those that have gained some maturity in it, right? When we think about how do we get a certain business unit leader or a certain part of the business to adopt. I've been to many GCCs where there's amazing insights that are coming from the team. The team here actually knows the products and the customers better than headquarters. And they've built tenure over time, some 9, 15 years. But yet there's different levels of adoption from a brand manager or a business unit leader in the business. And we have to try to, why is that, right? How do we take the genius of the insight here and really apply it to business growth? It has to be more than human behavior and human choice to adopt that insight. And so, yes, I think they are recognizing as ways to break down, any sort of barrier that gets in the way of business growth or business innovation. And part of that does have to do with forced collaboration.
Lalitha, I'm sure, is a leader like that. She's been with Cargill, IKEA, now JLR. Give us an idea how things have changed, how GCs have matured, and the kind of value that they are bringing today.
I think it's obviously all of the things that Paul already said. I think probably a decade back, we've only talked about labor arbitrage, right? It's no longer about the conversation about labor arbitrage. It's about innovation, and more importantly, I would call it value amplification. Right? And that comes with the maturity of the shared knowledge that has grown in the industry. If you go to some of the headquarters, in any domain you take it, you're probably the only company who's in that vicinity, right? But if you come to India, you pick any domain, there are 5 other companies who are doing. So the competition is a lot more closer. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, your insights are far more better. So it is the shared experiences of the leaders who can bring, because all the organizations go through different journey in terms of their maturity, right? In terms of it could be functional transformation, it could be digital transformation. So when you hire leaders who have been there and done that in other part of the same domain with other companies, you're bringing a lot more maturity. So your speed to market or speed to achieve your transformation is going to be far more superior, right? And that is what is changing the dynamics and moving away. That's the reason it's no longer a cost conversation, but it is about innovation. It is about the value amplification and how fast can you achieve your organizational goals. It's all about that now.
Yeah, when you mentioned that, when I coming by, everybody, all the BFSIs, Wells Fargo,
Exactly.
JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, literally facing each other, next to each other.
Absolutely. That's the shared experience, right?
And massive centers, each of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell me, you relatively new, 1 year now into India's setup as a GCC. You had experience in Seattle before that with Best Buy. Give us an idea the kind of what provoked you to come here and the kind of experiences that you had.
Yeah, what provoked us was really about talent. The amount of talent we have here in the areas that we need, cloud, AI, e-commerce is just phenomenal. You can't find that anywhere else, right? So it was first and foremost about talent. And, with that lens in mind, actually, way back, Seattle was our first talent hub. As we were looking to expand, within the U.S. and beyond Minneapolis, we set up the Seattle office a long time ago as a talent hub. And now, as we're looking globally, this was kind of the natural place. And I would say, when we decided to go, global, it wasn't something that we decided, let's just go to Bangalore or go to India. We looked globally. We looked at multiple locations. We evaluated many different places, both on talent, on cost, on a number of other dimensions. Time zone was an important consideration, and we would have liked to have an office or a hub that is in the same time zone. But after all of that, when you looked at it, this emerged as the place to be. Again, from the density of the talent and the caliber of the talent and the kind of things that we were looking at. With all of those, with all of those, we decided to be here. And then even here, we looked across India. It wasn't Bangalore that was no-brainer. We looked at Pune, we looked at Chennai, Hyderabad, all of those locations as well. We visited a number of locations, but consistently Bangalore emerged as kind of the place.
All the traffic
India,
and all that.
Despite the traffic, right? Of course, right. If we could solve that one thing, things would be even better. There'd probably be 2,000 GCCs instead of 700 in Bangalore. But yeah, fundamentally it was about that. I would say also from a timing perspective, to a lot of folks, it seems that we were a little bit late, and in some ways maybe, but I think post-COVID, a lot of things have evolved where it made it a lot easier for us to kind of come here, right? And I would also say it's not that we haven't been in India before. It's just the way we have been in India is different from where we are now. We've had fairly large number of teams in India already, but with our partners and with our vendors. This is in an extension of that, but in a different way, where this is an extension of Best Buy itself. So it's still kind of coming here, but in a little bit of a different capability and a different outlook. Way back when we started, this was a little bit more about offshoring, and cost was a consideration, versus this time the considerations were completely different. This time, our purpose of being here was to accelerate our strategy, our transformation, and our growth. And again, there was no other place better than where we are today.
Okay, and the plan is to expand Best Buy to do a lot of things around what the enterprise needs, is it, the GCC?
Yeah, the purpose, as I said, for Best Buy in having a hub here is to accelerate our strategy, our transformation, and our growth, which means that this is a place where we would be working on things that are high impact, that are the top enterprise priorities, that help us accelerate along the axes that are important. Yeah.
You'll tell me, you're the ones who've been bringing many of these not just retail, so many of these GCCs to India. It's come close to 200 now?
175.
175.
200 won't be too far.
Won't be
Not
too far
at all, the pace that we're
at
going.
which is growing, no?
Yeah.
Tell us, what's your advice to GCCs that are coming in now?
Yeah.
What should they kind of focus on to get to speed?
So I'm going to hark back to kind of the origin of the thought. And I would say that you have to have a real strategy for the GCC. You shouldn't be really building a GCC without it being tied into an enterprise kind of strategy kind of framework, because it's not an outpost. It used to be. It's not anymore. And so these centers are strategically relevant to the enterprise for whatever reason. It could be digital reinvention, it could be transformation, it could be a number of factors that kind of dovetail into the thought of saying, hey, I need to have a GCC that is relevant to the strategic objectives of the company. I think that in many ways is the foundational element of building a GCC. I think the second and really important one is that labor arbitrage is not what you should be building the strategic pillar on. You should be thinking of the center as value accretive over the long term and even in the short term. And the reason for that is a very important one. The dollar-rupee arbitrage will always give you the arbitrage that you're looking for. What you have come to India for, and the reason why you're setting up these centers is for intellectual arbitrage, not just labor arbitrage. And so that should inform why you've come here, what you're needing to set up. And if you really think about all of that and kind of crunch it into what you're here for a talent ecosystem. And a talent ecosystem far deeper than just the talent that you're going to get on board, but it's also the ecosystem effect of 25 years of this industry being around. But more importantly, you have great universities, you have the startup ecosystem. And so building these bridges to this ecosystem is fundamentally important for success over the long term. It might not be in the first year, but over the long term, I think that's the way that I think of it when we advise our customers. I would also say that, increasingly there is no downside of coming now if you haven't done it 10 years ago, because a lot of companies, to Surendra's point, is that you have late mover advantage, which is counterintuitive, but in this case it is an advantage. There have been stumbles across 25 odd years, and everyone has learned all of those mistakes, and so you're not going to kind of stumble on the same things that other companies might have 10 years ago. But the really important one is that you have millions of talent-ready competency bases that exist today that you can dovetail into. And last but not least, it's really important that that you think of this as a competency build out over a long period of time. This is not a short-term game. This is not a transactional game. This is a long-term game. And I'm talking about, I really think of it as, think of this as, as any branch office of the mothership that is being set up, right? If I de-jargonize all of this, it's a branch office. You'd never let it fail, because you will give it the sustenance that needs from a strategy perspective, an investment perspective. It should tie up to kind of the broader strategy of the organization. And so if you really look at it from that lens, it's really important to think as this as a very strategic unit built with very competent people who are going to solve very important problems over the long term. So I would only tell anyone who's listening that what they are coming, and especially the candidates who are looking at the GCCs, this is not about a job. This is about a career, and careers straddle decades, and they will grow and they will learn and they will become deeply competent in those industry verticals. So I think of it as much more strategic than tactical over the long term.
Much more strategic. Yeah, don't come to here thinking about labor arbitrage. There's extremely competent people. There's a history that we built of experience over the years, and an ecosystem of startups and academic institutions and all of that you can really benefit from. No, absolutely. And that is what I think is increasingly bringing newer GCCs, like I'm sure Surendra would have played a...
I'll build on that a little bit. I think, in some ways it feels a little bit late, but COVID has shrunk the world even more so. I think COVID has made it easier for people to collaborate across geos, right? A lot of companies, weren't as familiar with working with the remote workforce. It used to be throw things over the fence and, maybe next morning you're getting stuff. But, teams have evolved. They've learned to work with people over video conference. And it's not just, the ways of working, but even the tools have evolved. Video conferencing has gotten so much easier. It's now natural for people to start a meeting and, start teams. Previously, it used to be a nightmare getting everything all set up. And I think it's made it a lot easier for people to kind of think about India and then, just a global workforce, and then also think of it as an extension of an existing workforce rather than a different location. And I think that's been, one of the great things about COVID.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Mindsets really changed after COVID. Very true. I just want to come to the point that I said we want to focus on a little today, and that's this whole idea of best sourcing. Give us an idea. What is the mutual benefit, and what's the value that you can bring to the parent organization when you do this kind of partnerships?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, well, we view it as, we call it best sourcing. We view it as an and, not an or. And all of my clients, and I think shared with the panelists here, have that in their ecosystems. So it starts off with first being clear and using clear criteria for what work should go where within your overall operating model and ecosystem. We heard a lot in the first part of the discussion about talent and about focusing the Global Capability Center on the distinctive capabilities for the company in which they're part of to grow. It's linked to the growth strategy, the strategic objectives. These are things that are distinctive to the company. And the answer to that part of the strategy is about talent. It's about best talent and finding talent in talent-rich locations, like both Lalitha and Surendra said. There's also parts of our work, though, that is still measurable, repeatable, procedural, transactional, right? We haven't been able to automate all of that type of work out of our systems, or out of our workforces. And so the answer to that type of work is not a talent play, but rather a technology play. And so then the question is, will our companies ever have the wherewithal to invest in the level of technology to bring in automation, AI, analytics to those high volume, repeatable parts of the work that we perform? Or is it better to tap into managed services partners, where their core business is investing at scale across many clients to drive elimination, automation, augmentation for that part of the work? So talent play is about the distinctive capabilities, clear lane for the global capability centers. High volume, repeatable, measurable, procedural, transactional work that still lives in our organizations is a technology play. And then there can be a choice. Some GCCs have massive scale, and therefore with it maybe the budget to invest in these technologies. Most GCCs, though, would tap into a partnership model to bring that. That's number one. Number two then is, okay, so now if we have that connected ecosystem, all of the tools and innovation and technology that the managed services partner is bringing to reinvent, we would say, or transform that type of work, that should be made available to the GCC as well. And not only the GCC, but also at headquarters, right? Everybody benefiting from the same tools and technology that could bring about growth, innovation, scaling AI, productivity. And so the same tools that we apply in our own managed services to deliver an outcome, which increasingly we're getting paid upon that outcome, we make available inside the GCC. So everybody has access to the same. And then just the last point on the connection that we're seeing increasingly is it's very fluid, where you're not even sure if it's managed services or GCC, where we'll see evolving models that maybe inside of one of the GCCs, there's a new capability. I'm speaking with a retailer that already has a global capability center. And we're looking at retail analytics and how AI is reinventing merchandising, so agentic merchandising. And it's a new capability that it doesn't really reside at the right level anywhere in the company. And so, yeah, we should build that in the GCC, but we don't have the skills to build it new in the GCC. So there's an idea of a build, operate, transfer of a new capability inside the GCC, right? Whereas before it might have been build it over here, transition it over there. Now it's all one place, one shared ecosystem where the employees from the companies working alongside the managed services providers to build new. And over time, then the partners leave and the capability is there working. So many, I think, different ways to get best talent connected, right work in the right part of the talent ecosystem, but then leveraging and leapfrogging with the technology and innovation investments that managed services have made and applying that inside the GCC in a more fit-for-purpose way than maybe it was 10 or 20 years ago.
Okay. Neil, is that what you kind of was encouraged by? Were a lot of the GCCs that you were bringing in wanted those kinds of partnerships as well, and that's what encouraged you to tie up with Accenture?
Yeah, I think, again, if I use my strategy hat on this, I would say that you could call it best sourcing, you could call it hybridization of the business model, but I would say a majority of companies today have a walled garden that they're creating in terms of the GCC, where you have IP, core kind of tech that is being set up. But you have to have flex capacity. And I think Accenture brings to the table the ability to really rapidly scale. And these are business needs, right? You have a business that needs to scale really fast. And these are strategic levers that you have to kind of pull. So scale advantages. The flexibility of the commercial model. You don't want to always say that I have a fixed kind of model. It has to be dynamic to a certain extent, and that the need for that dynamic kind of economic model is to be resilient. And resiliency, I think, is really a need to risk mitigate the future, right? We don't know what we don't know. And I think this is one of those really important things to bake into the business model as you build it out, to say, I do need the walled garden, I do need the intellectual property, I do need scale, I do need flexibility, I need speed to market. These are really important drivers of business. And I think that the reason that we are so relevant in the market, that is Accenture and ANSR today, is we see this as two sides of the same coin. I think Paul, mentioned the fluidity of the business model, and it is really fluid, because the business model changes with time. The needs of a business change with time, and you need to have a partner network that understands the need for fluidity. And today, I think Accenture and ANSR coming together actually provides this resilient, fluid, dynamic, cost competitive, and really strategic capability, right? I think those were fundamental pillars of us coming together. And I think that we will only solidify this as time passes, because like Paul said, I think to say that we have a business model that is etched in time would be the wrong thing to say, right? We've become so fluid in our thinking about the future that I would say it's a constantly evolving canvas, and a canvas that I don't think will ever stop evolving, if you ask me. And that's how we will be relevant over time. And that's why this partnership will become more visible to the street, more visible and needed by our clients. And I think that we will have, and as we always should have, the DNA that says that change is the imperative in this model as we go forward.
And just earlier this week, we wrote a story saying as GCCs grow, they're actually outsourcing more. So I think they are recognizing. So is this how you decide? How to the both of you? I mean, how do you decide what to insource, what to keep within your GCC, what to outsource?
I call it shared value creation, right? It's together. Definitely, the partners bring a lot of operational efficiencies. Not only that, as Neil rightly said, it's a very fluid kind of transformations that are happening at all headquarters, right? That means the skills that we are building today may or may not be relevant tomorrow. So how do you do that skill balance of getting people? And that is all about this flex model kind of a thing. But essentially, wherever you don't want to lose the core as an organization, what is your IP, what is your core capability point of view, those are the things you definitely build in-house, which are more value-added, value-generating, and operational efficiency, fast to market, time to market, faster to hire. And GCCs are always looking at implementing newer things, bringing newer thought process to the organization. For example, if you quickly want to do a POC, okay, you always go to a partner because they have the skills, because you don't know whether it is contextual and work for your organization. And in order to do that, you need to first bring the skill, experiment it out, prove it to your headquarters, and then you bring scale, right? And then you have a advantage of deciding where do you want to build the scale. right? Once you prove the proof point, that's one. But I'll also give you the GCC point of view in the partner thing is the competition, what you talked about, which is probably the partners are a lot evolved and partners are probably no longer competing with us. But inside the organizations, it is still a big dilemma. Because of the existence of so many partnerships in the organization, they're always confused in terms of who do I go to? Do I go to GCC? Do I go to a partner? Where do I build these skills? Kind of a thing. To address those concerns, it is extremely essential to have the strategy right. And more importantly, you need to have a playbook in terms of what is your placement strategy? What are your guardrails? How do you decide? You don't have to decide by technology, I will want to do 30% in GCC, 70% with partner kind of a things. But what is my core competencies? What is my future looking like? What are the things we as an organization are investing on? And how do we place these things? Having that playbook, having that placement strategy is so important. And more importantly, socializing that playbook in the headquarters is even more important.
Okay. For the entire organization to be clear about
Exactly.
where you should get
Absolutely.
it done.
And of course, there are mature organizations where the accountability sits with the GCC. So you don't really have to, as far as your stakeholders are concerned, your countries are concerned, they don't have to worry about it as long as GCC is the front ending and where the work is happening. I've worked in such environments. So that is the other part of the conversation.
Have you reached a stage where you now, as a GCC, you also decide, okay, this is, instead of leaving it to headquarters, you kind of decide, I want to outsource?
Absolutely. There are many GCCs out there who are making this, I call it the distributed decision making, right? Because as you're growing in terms of your senior leadership roles in GCCs, because in the past, all the senior leadership roles only existed in the headquarters. But as we move and creating those senior leadership roles who have more accountability enterprise-wide, then the decision making also sits with the distributed leadership is all I'm talking about.
Okay. Surendra, similar for you?
Yeah, I'd say we'd certainly leverage each other's strength. I mean, there are multiple heuristics depending on what you want to leverage. I think fundamentally it is you have to have a very clear purpose of why you're here and why now, and then use that to kind of decide how you want to organize teams. And when I say organize teams, not just within your HQ and here, but also across your managed service providers. But I would add to that, it's not just the managed service providers. I think besides talent, one of the reasons to be here is you have so many other partners. You have your technology partners here, you have your product vendors here, you have, of course, your managed service providers here. There is deep startup ecosystem here. How can you bring all of them together in ways that is I don't want to say uniquely, but in a way uniquely possible here, more so than it is, in other places? How do you bring them together, leverage each other's expertise and motivations as well, and co-create something that is truly transformational in ways that you couldn't have done in possibly a different location? And as part of that, like I said, there's multiple heuristics that change depending on the life cycle of the GCC. So, for example, for me in the early stage of our GCC, as we're just getting set up, one heuristic is there are certain things that are top enterprise priorities and critical to be delivered this year. Now, those are kind of the things that we want to do in the hub. That is the purpose of the hub. But by the nature of where we are in the life cycle of our GCC, that is just getting set up, those things can't wait till we, build our teams, hire, ramp them up. It'll be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months till all of that happens. So those are potentially things that we think about. Maybe they don't belong in the hub right now. Maybe you leverage a managed service provider, or maybe do it in HQ, right? So that is one heuristic. But like I said, there's multiple decisions, everything from cost to capabilities to your purpose. And again, depending on your life cycle, you kind of choose which makes sense where.
As this happens, what things fluid, some things that you do inside a GCC first, at some point you realize that probably you need to get it done by outsourced service providers. Does that happen?
There are also times it also depends on organizational maturity, right? For example, there are certain sensitive functions which is considered as a core to organization, like for example, HR and other stuff. There may be reluctance to give it outside the organization. So that is when the GCC can step in, prove the value, prove that it can be done thousands of miles away. And once you hit a maturity and once there is a certain level of comfort, they could be the things that you would want to pass it on to a managed services partner.
Okay. But pure proprietary stuff and all you would rather do inside, is
That's
it?
right. That's the reason we exist.
Okay. And you said sometimes HR kind of thing, sensitive data and all that is...
customer data, there could be many things, and it all depends on your organizational maturity in terms of how comfortable are you working with partners.
Okay.
So I just said, very, very much, as a few of us have said, fluidity in the model, and that also requires then flexibility in partnerships. A lot of clients that I work with, as they're maybe getting started, their CEO is asking for the GCC or maybe the technology organization to think about AI and Gen AI and how they embed it across their whole company and how it can drive growth. And they look across at their technology estate and talent, and they find that over time they've fallen into fragmented outsourcing for a variety of reasons over many years, that now they have many different partners in the ecosystem. And what's left in the technology organization is project managers that are managing partners and managing work performed by partners. So one of the first steps they take is re-internalizing from all that fragmentation to bring the thought leadership back into the company. And then once they have it, they say, okay, well, some of what we brought back is actually not a distinctive capability, and we put it back out. If it's application development or maintenance or testing or things that aren't about the thought leadership. So sometimes you have that. Some other examples, as I had mentioned, is the introduction of a new capability, even if it is part of a distinctive capability or growth, but it's a new capability that's also powered by new technology or Gen AI or something that's happening to build it with a partner and then transfer it over. So it goes in both directions. Very, very much more fluid than it used to be.
Add on only one point there is in terms of fragmentation, in terms of process, right?
Okay.
Because the process has been happening in different parts of the business. Usually the best way, which we've always described, is if your tech and process are going to be stable for the next 24 months, that's an ideal candidate to be given to a managed services, right? So, but in today's world, it's not going to be true, right? Because process standardization, tech standardization, and with so much of AI and everything coming in, it's all about how do we pick a partner who's going to really partner with us in the transformation and stabilizing the platform for you.
Accenture, for instance, how do you use technology to do all of this? You have something called Synops, I hear, which is basically an automation intelligent platform that helps you decide for business processes, is it? That you can that decide what to insource, what to outsource, and that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah, so I would elevate, so Synops will be part of this, but I'd elevate to something at Accenture that we have, which is called the GCC platform. The GCC platform
Synops is a GCC platform.
It's part of it. No. So GCC platform has 5 components, Synops being one that I'll explain as part of it. The first one is GCC Navigator. GCC Navigator is, like you said, more at the strategy and design level, where you can think about benchmarking across other organizations. How have they chosen to build capabilities or source them? How do I build a value case and an implementation associated with that? So it's called GCC Navigator, helping navigate the decision making around the stand-up of the GCC. The next part of the platform is called Elevate X, and that's all about transition, mobilization, service excellence. Many GCCs are building capabilities brand new, but others are transitioning work from headquarters or from a business into the GCC. And so Accenture has been doing operations and technology. And so over 20 to 25 years of experience of doing transition, mobilization, service excellence, and how we've brought technology to that. Many of our clients have capabilities, but they're not infusing AI into how knowledge transfer is working. That's called Elevate X, bringing all from technology and operations. The third one, SynOps. And SynOps in of itself is constantly evolving. Right now, it does have digital twinning type capabilities, so you can model a process and get recommendations from a Six Sigma agent on where to improve that process. It also has capability that is available in the GCCs for global productivity hub or management of looking at automation identification, right? What work are humans performing maybe would be better with an automation. Also a command center type capability. So I'm able to see really how work is being performed, not only here in the GCC, but across the full end-to-end value chain. So that's what you'd have in SynOps. There's just two more of these. GenWizard, and all the GCC platform, to keep simple, but GenWizard is more technology. And it's how do we bring AI into software design, engineering, testing. Also in it has some reverse code engineering, so I'm able to take an old language, use English language to translate it into a new language. So this is GenWizard. And the last one we call LearnVantage, which is less a technology, but more a capability to help employees across the GCC upskill in this age of AI and agentic AI. And it's through an acquisition that Accenture made of Udacity to have digital-ready content as part of LearnVantage. So that's, and all of that now we've made fit for purpose for GCCs. So I would say a few years ago, maybe it was fit for purpose for an operations business, but maybe not affordable for a GCC or fit right. And we've done a lot of work and investment to make it affordable, to create less stickiness. So unpack some of the proprietary algorithms that were there so that you could leave it behind with the GCC with no service surrounding it. And then the last thing I'll say just around technology that Surendra had mentioned is that Accenture also, because we are the number one oftentimes partners with the large system integrators or the other ecosystem partners like Microsoft or Google and so on, or also are curating startup ecosystems, right? We could also be, in many cases, the connector for a GCC that maybe doesn't have the relationships in the market. So that's another way that not only with Accenture technology, but with our ecosystem partnerships and startups that we work with, that we help bring technologies to the GCCs.
And people are already using it, some of these GCCs?
The GCC platform. Yeah. So we talk about it as one thing so that it's just easy, right? Because Accenture sometimes can show up with so many tools that it can be overwhelming. So GCC platform is one thing, but you can unpack and take just bits and parts. And so many of the bits and parts I've mentioned have been around for a long time. So the S very much are being adopted by GCCs. And I should also say, because we've talked about the partnership with ANSR, ANSR has a OneWork. And maybe I'm stealing Neil's thunder, but it's very complementary, right? Just like the capabilities are complementary, so are the technologies, right? Whereas, maybe we're doing some things around strategy and benchmarking. I don't know again if this was a question for you, but world-class capabilities around the talent and the experience for the talent and the onboarding, and they're all connected between OneWork and GCC platform as one experience for our clients.
Okay, Neil, you want to talk about OneWork?
Yeah, I think. To just hark back to what we do at ANSR, I think we are one of the largest. We source, I think, in very large numbers. We hire for all the GCC clients that we have. So we are one of the largest kind of companies out there that are hiring talent. And what we're trying to solve, and maybe we've partially solved, is how do you get the time to offer kind of crunched, right? And therefore solve for a very important strategic goal of our clients, which is to get talent into their GCCs, right? That's what they came for. And what we've done in order to do that is invest a lot of money, time, effort, and I think intellectual capability in terms of building proprietary kind of platforms that allow for the latest in tech to disrupt what used to be an interviewing process that maybe I went to 20 years ago, right? That world has completely changed. And so if you ever touch recruitment today, it is about people touching you, but there's a lot of underlying technology platforms that are playing to improve the experience of that candidate. And that experience is really important. I can't I can't tell you how much it's important, because in an extremely competitive market for talent, if you can shorten the window, if you can make it more efficient, if it can be more friendly, if the AI could match resumes to JDs, we as a company become non-linear because we don't need to have so many people do it. That's one, and that's a benefit. But more importantly, you get the best talent repository from the market to attention itself, to the JD, and to the customer or our clients wanting that particular specific kind of requirement. And so I think the technology has come a long way. We are infusing much more into it, because we think that from how you take an assessment to how you onboard to how your first day kind of looks is changing, and rapidly changing, right? And it's a new generation that's coming into the workforce. They don't expect what we expected 15 or 20 years ago. And so the mindset has changed, and therefore the technology is changing. But I would say that, going even further than just the recruitment part of it, you give off an offer today, and in the Indian context, you have 60, 90-day kind of wait periods because of notice. If you're not still relevant to a client, to a candidate, by touching this candidate, by really selling this opportunity to him or her, and being in constant contact, you might have disproportionately bad outcomes at the end of that notice period. And therefore, not to get very tactical, we are trying to use technology to disrupt this behavioral pattern. And it's not an easy one to solve, because it is behavior and it is based on competition in the market. So I would say that once you get them on board, or when you give them an offer, it's not only about keeping them relevant and keeping them kind of connected, but you're using technology to connect them to the company, right? But even when they come on board, the experience of being onboarded, constantly being trained over the life cycle of this particular, and I'm going to call it again, career, is really important. And I think that not everyone realizes how much of technology goes into this, and the deep tech that is trying to solve this problem, because it's a massive problem. And this industry is going to grow maybe twice over in the next 5 years. And we think that that will be a fundamental lever for the growth of the industry, not just ANSR, but broadly speaking, because the kind of employment base is also going to grow significantly. So a lot of technology, a lot of deep technology, and a lot of intellectual capital being invested right now.
Have you seen improvements? Do you have any metrics to show how much you improved on these counts?
I think that we've crashed cycle time in terms of folks onboarding, becoming employees. More important than that, we've seen reductions, and I'm not trying to paint a picture of just rosiness, but we've seen droppage factor, and I consider a droppage is that you get an offer and then you shop for the offer, you shop your offer, and then you might disappear. I think those have significantly come down. Is it still a problem in the market? Yes, it is, and it's a lot of factors determine it. But I think that we've made significant strides by infusing technology into this mix, and I think that not only for today, but going forward, this is going to be super important for this industry.
Lalitha, let me ask you, in terms of the kind of work that you do out of your center, I think you said that a lot of the work that you do is around ER&D.
Engineering R&D.
Give us an idea of some phenomenal work you've done.
We do quite a bit of engineering R&D in all the three parts of engineering, what we call it, which is onboard software, power electronics, and also we used to call it engine, body, and chassis, which is mechatronics and all that kind of work as well. But besides that, we also work in the other business services with, industrial operations, which is essentially manufacturing, supply chain, digital, and all of these areas.
Okay. And impact-wise, is there anything you can quantify? Not yet.
Oh, impact-wise, definitely. I keep joking that we should stop asking how big is your center, right?
Yes.
Because we still used to determining the value of the center based on the headcount. And undoubtedly, I say the 1,000 people we have in the center, we generate more value than 7,000 people I used to manage in my past, right? So it's not just about headcount is not proportionally equivalent to the value generation. We just have to move beyond that and
depends on the
look
kind
at
of people you hire, does it?
It definitely. I think it depends on the kind of the work you do.
Okay.
Because the people are hired for the kind of the work you do. So if it is aspirational work, you always attract the right kind of talent. It all depends on the quality of the work, how you create an employee value proposition, yeah.
Okay, Surendra, same question to you. I mean, what's your mandate? I mean, are you going to do a lot of AI work and all that out of India? What?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying like AI for us is not our strategy. It's a tool to enable, our existing strategies, right? And we have great, teams in the U.S. And we're continuing to build that here as well. We're using AI to improve both our customers and our employees' experience. We have built a good team here around that. We have a data and AI center of excellence that is led out of here. We have some leadership that is leading some of these functions out of here. And then we have been building some really cool experiences out of our hub out here. And I would preface that by saying a lot of those teams also tend to be not necessarily exclusively here. Some of them are exclusively here, but in many cases it is mixed teams with people across the world collaborating on building some of these things. One of the early things that we launched when we started last year, we started in June of last year, and pre-holiday, which for us is kind of the Thanksgiving holiday season, so pre-holiday in November, one of the early things that we launched out of the hub here was an AI-powered gift finder experience where you could go talk to an AI assistant to help you find something, right?
Gift for somebody.
Yes, gift for somebody. And then we're right now experimenting with an LLM-powered search experience. So instead of it being kind of keyword search, we're using LLM to understand customers' intent. And instead of there being kind of static filters, it dynamically builds filters based on its understanding of what's important to customers. We're building a lot of experiences for both our customers and our employees around, customer service, around both pre-purchase and post-purchase services, around installations, repairs, delivery, where they can be better served, faster and in better ways with less friction. So there's a lot we're doing with AI here, and it is certainly. It is certainly one of the things we want to do out of here, partly because, again, we have, a really great ecosystem and a really great talent pool for that out here.
Okay. I want to ask all of you this question, and I increasingly hear this from of course, the more mature GCCs and all that. They tell us, don't even call us GCC.
Yeah.
We are the company. We are Best Buy. We are JLR. How do you create that culture of, that you are the company and don't think of yourself as an outpost trying to service the parent and all that? You're a strategic part of it. Who wants to go first?
I can jump in. Like, creating that culture is not just about exporting your operations here. It is more about extending your identity, right? And we are very intentional about building the culture. I'll talk about some, tactical stuff, but before that, culturally, we really watch out for, like, we don't use the word, we try to avoid using like India team or US team or X team. When you talk about teams, we talk about it as, a marketplace team or an e-commerce team, which is composed of people that are distributed globally, right? And we really watch out for those kind of, things that people say and how they identify themselves. We don't want geographical identifiers. Beyond that, we're very intentional about, making sure that as we're hiring people here, we have a very strong onboarding program to help them, help train them, culturally about about our history and our culture, but also with our teams in the US as well, train them about what it means to, manage a workforce, a global workforce, and an Indian workforce. What are kind of differences? What are some of the cultural nuances? And we're constantly watching, we're constantly surveying people, we're constantly learning and adjusting kind of as we need to. We certainly want one global culture, But that doesn't mean that the global culture is insular. It doesn't mean taking a US culture and stamping it onto India. We want to have one global culture, and we want to have our corporate culture be an extension and build here. But then we also want to learn from our cultures here in India and take the best of what we have there and the best of what we have here, and see how we can evolve our global culture in a way that is even better. For examples, there are things that our US teams are uniquely strong at. There are things that culturally our Indian teams approach differently. I'm an Indian, so I can say some of these things, but Indians, lots of people, not a lot of resources, right? So we're used to kind of finding, solutions in scrappy ways and solve. Frugal innovation. The word is jugaad, right? But how do you solve problems when resources are limited in scrappy ways and really quick? So kind of taking that mindset. How do we take that mindset of problem solving and help kind of evolve? Apply that globally, right? The other is it's a very competitive culture. Like from childhood, all of us are really used to competing. Like lots of people, not enough opportunities and resources. So everyone's always competing, whether it's for a seat in an engineering college, or whether it's for a job or for everything else. And that competition, if harnessed well, can lead to really good things. But if not managed well, it could, lead to sharp elbows, and it could lead to unhealthy things. So, for fundamentally being aware of kind of the strengths of both of our cultures, and then taking both of those and helping educate and evolve both of those cultures so that overall we kind of get stronger. But again, going for, making sure that we have a global culture with some local nuances where it's appropriate.
Very nice, very interesting.
Absolutely, creating a single unified culture is going to be key. But at the same time, we should not forget that it is the local cultural agility, regional agility is what has to be incorporated in that. When it comes to creating the culture, the company's identity, vision, the purpose of the organization, these are definitely non-negotiables, because it has to be the same. And most of us create the offices which are replicating the headquarters, etc. But at the same time, we also have to realize it's not replicating the headquarters here 100%. There has to be a 20% of localization, especially when it comes to things like some of the policies which has to be uniquely designed. And we all went through this negotiating with headquarters on some of these things in the past.
And you mentioned parental insurance when you were talking earlier.
Exactly, right?
I had no clue that parental insurance is not there anywhere else.
Yeah, because most of the other countries, the social security covers it. And we don't have that social security in India. So it could be in-laws insurance, or it could be parents insurance, which is going to be a unique requirement to attract the talent in the market. And so it used to be with, for example, holidays, right? Most of the Western countries celebrate probably only Christmas or summer holidays. But in India, depends on which city you are in, your holiday calendar changes. So understanding, explaining, and creating that 20% differentiation to be in line with the market is super important as well, while creating the culture. And definitely, as Surendra said, culture goes both ways. It is not about we learning about the headquarter culture, but it is also for headquarter to be understanding what is the market we are operating in, because we are also representative for most of the organizations, the customers in the market, right? So understanding that market nuances is equally important.
Okay. Paul, Neil, you want to add to that?
I would say that culture is really important. It's really the glue that kind of binds the mothership and the baby ship in many ways. And if you don't get it right, across time, you will face problems. That being said, it's an extremely touchy-feely kind of thing, and that's why it's so difficult to achieve. But I would say that there are a couple of things that are really important as foundational pillars. The ways of working, policy frameworks that are global and tweaked to local, but in the ballpark of being one company and not a distinct differentiation that is being built into it because of cost or other reasons, right? So you should be living in a world which is appropriately policy governed, right? I would say that it's really important to build culture through the exchange of people and ideas, right? And it doesn't come easy to any company that I have ever seen. So this takes a long period of time to say, you have to have short pat assignments from the teams here to go to the mothership and really experience the brand. For folks in the US or wherever they are, whichever geography, to come into the country and really work with the teams here, really relevant to the build-up of culture. I think it's also really important that you see through the prism of saying, this is not an isolated team that sits across the pond. If you get ahead of that curve in your mind and you say that I could be sitting in Tokyo, I could be sitting in Canberra, I could be sitting in, Philadelphia. This is just one company. And it just so happens that they have a few folks in my team that sit in Bangalore or wherever the distributed environment is. And it takes a lot to really get there, right? But I think the tone at the top of the organization really determines culture to a great extent, to say that I, as the leader, will go down and meet my team ever so often as I would meet someone in Philadelphia, that I would go down to Bangalore, and maybe it's a 14-hour flight, but I'll invest in this strategic capability. And investment is not a matter of dollars. It's a matter of commitment. It's a matter of effort. It's a matter of resolve. And then only will you get to the cultural kind of fabric that you want to create. I know a number of companies now talk about having the second headquarter. And I think that's great. That's fantastic. I think that shows the evolution of this industry. But I just want to add that it should have the cultural attributes of headquarters, which is strategic. The management of that team and the management layer should be well distributed across boundaries. Like C-suite individuals should be sitting across boundaries, right? There's no particular reason that they shouldn't. That's when I think the cultural nuance becomes one, where the fabric kind of gets woven together, and there aren't any seams in this fabric because the fabric is just one. But let me say that takes time. It's not as easy as I'm
Takes
saying.
time, and the leadership has to set the tone.
Correct.
Paul, you want to add to that?
Yeah. Well, these are all brilliant answers, so I feel like I'm summarizing rather than adding. But some points that I find important, or what we're seeing with clients. One is this idea that it's being, rather than the India team or the GCC. The GCC leaders I'm meeting with aren't calling it that, are intentional about not, because it is, it's one office as part of the network. What that Neil had mentioned, the idea of the purpose, when we talk about the purpose of the GCC, and if that purpose has to do with, access to talent to drive innovation, well then that's what we should be measuring, right? Not headcount, but how many patents have been filed, right, coming out, and that is a part of reinforcing, which is my next point, reinforcing culture, right, by measuring the things that are linked to the purpose, and also then reminding the organization that when we innovate this way. So the point around reinforcement from various business leaders about the role of this part of our organization in the overall ecosystem of the organization, which then comes with it, reinforcement comes visits and cross collaboration and so on. The last one that I'm seeing is this culture is a two-way street. A lot of when I'm meeting with either GCC leads or people that are helping GCCs, there's a big focus on cultural assimilation, and everybody here mentioned it, so it's great to hear it. But sometimes I hear too much focus on, or only singular focus on, cultural assimilation from the India talent out, right? How do we learn more about the company? How do we create the store experience so I know what it's like to be inside of a Best Buy? How do I work with U.S. leaders? When there has to be equal effort on the headquarters, whatever that is. U.S. or Europe or wherever, Japan, right, wherever it is. And so we're also doing a lot with what is it like to work with a global team? What is it like to work specifically if your capability center is in India, with an India team? When you say this, it means that, or it's heard that way. And so you should understand that, and just in terms of communicating like you would across any cultural sensitization. And that's a two-way street. Ways of working, respect around time zones, building teams with leadership if you're going to ask for certain accountability that you have. All of that is important parts of building this unified culture so that we can set up everybody for success. And so I think
Absolutely.
yeah.
And so need one culture, but has to be a two-way street.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I love the infusing of, take the beauty of the culture here and infusing it back, right? So actually the corporate culture gets refreshed in a way because there's increased talent, just like if you were to open a new office somewhere and bring that into now this unified culture. So very much a two-way street.
You see the global company headquarters wanting to do that?
Well, I think two thoughts. What is I think some reasons why the headquarter company is maybe moving to the GCC is because they don't see speed of innovation in their current environment. So this is, and so there is an interest of how do we get faster to innovate. And this is part of that answer. It's not the only part of the answer, but there needs to be a cultural shift about failing, about experimenting, about, I'll have to learn the word that you said, right? But innovated wisely or frugally, right? That has to be now brought back to the culture because that's one of the reasons they're here in the first place. The other thing about this HQ2 that what I heard you mention it is, while that is good from a culture and connectivity perspective, the problem with HQ2 is that it copies the ills or what's broken in HQ1. So sometimes HQ1 has functional silos. We don't want to copy that here by having teams that are functionally waiting for something to come from HQ1 so I can do it here in HQ2. And I've seen that in some GCCs where we meet with a consumer insights team and a customer insights team. So it's consumer goods where a customer would be the retailer and a consumer would be somebody like us buying it. And the teams would present to us the brilliance of their insights, and we asked, well, did the consumer team share it with the customer team? No, because the stakeholder that they work with at Global didn't ask them to. And there's the same level or there's the functional silos in the headquarters repeated here in each. So we need to take this opportunity to have not only like we said before, the SAPs and the and the Accentures and the ANSRs, that ecosystem, but also the fact that we have multiple functions inside our GCCs end to end working together in ways that at headquarters we don't have. Which is also a great part of culture, and then it is fused back. A lot of times when we talk about end to end and bringing technology together with business process, at headquarters that doesn't always happen so well, but here at the GCC we can do that, right? So I think so.
Absolutely, you're right.
Yeah.
I think they also want to learn from the cultures here, many of them at least.
Integration.
One last question. I know we're out of time, but talent is an important part of all of this, of course, and even for Times Techies, that's an important part of all that we do. For newer GCCs that are coming in, give us an idea, what should they do to attract talent, especially the lesser-known brands? Best Buy might be well-known. But I've even heard from big companies like yours that often you're not seen as tech companies. The talent wants to go to a Microsoft, an SAP, Accenture probably. But so even you struggle to position yourself as tech talent to attract the best of engineers and all that. What's your message to especially newer GCCs who are trying, and lesser-known brands, or trying to attract good talent? Any messages for them?
I have done this in the past, because some of the companies I worked for, nobody in India ever heard about the names. I think what is extremely important is, explaining the purpose of the organization, because the new generation is heavily driven by the purpose of the organizations they work for. So what is the purpose of the organization? How is it kind of the impact it has in the world or in the end customer? Some of those things. So clearly articulating the organization value, which is also part of the culture, that's primarily important. But I think the second most important aspect is how can you create aspirational work for the people? Which I'm not saying you cannot do, the routine stuff and other stuff, but what is the balance? If somebody has to come and process, for example, 200 invoices every day and go. While saying true to it, being authentic about it, explaining this, keeping it real is important. But if you can show them that 30% value-added work that happens in the organization, which is going to be aspirational for them to have a career roadmap and career path and other stuff, which is going to be super important. And of course, creating the customer experience centers, or what is your end customer, who is your end customers, whatever the work you're doing here, whether the brand is known to you or not, but how customers using this brand, how you're connecting, and the work, what you're doing, what kind of impact it has in the end customer experience. If you're able to articulate it, if you're able to simulate it, if you're able to clearly connect it back to the work that people do in the organization from a talent point of view, that is immensely satisfying. That is really part of the whole value creation from an employee perspective. So, articulate the purpose, articulate the work you do, articulate how it impacts your end customer, and more importantly, what's in it for me as a talent, and how do I gain by getting the skills, doing the aspirational work. As long as you have these pillars stronger, attracting talent is never going to be an issue.
Yeah, what we're seeing is that, and Lalitha mentioned this earlier, is that it's about the work that the people are being asked to do more so than the company that they're asking to do it for. That's at least what we're seeing. And we have some examples of companies you would say aren't well known here in India, but they're able to attract talent away from big technology players like the ones you've mentioned. Because there they might be just one software engineer on a large team. The opportunity they have now is, to own a product or to contribute to the app that the consumer is interacting with, and have accountability for it, as well as growth trajectory, which is what they also want, is advancement. So just two thoughts on part of that. One is the EVP, employee value proposition, super important, even for well-known companies. Like you asked in a question, joining a company I know versus why would a technologist join a company I know, or whatever I am, an engineer, or is important translation, and we need to make sure in our business cases we're investing in this so that we can attract the talent. But then also delivering upon that promise, because not only is there attraction, but there's retention. And so back to the best sourcing conversation from earlier before, and I loved your attrition numbers, but when you put the wrong work in the GCC, you get high attrition, right? So when we have the right work that's attracting people, GCCs have low attrition, even lower than managed services, because it's the right work that's driving in the distinctive capabilities of the company. If they choose to put some things that maybe are better served by managed services, we see 4x the attrition for that type of work, because they're getting trapped in a role that, because the technology investment is not coming, then they're getting trapped in a role with no line of sight to grow. Whereas in a managed services, of course, there is opportunity to grow to new accounts as you do it. So there are other business impacts of thinking through this, but at the end of the day, it's very much about the work that the people are being asked to do. If you're seeing that experience and the growth opportunity.
Yeah, I'd say just kind of repeating some of the things you guys said, but a lot of it, to your earlier point, is educating them about the kind of work that's being done. I think there is a misconception that a lot of deep technical work is done, elsewhere. The technology providers, I think when you go to implement that technology, a lot of the businesses, like our business, is very complex. We have stores, we have online, we insure products, we have services, we have lots of really complicated stuff. And we're doing deeply technical stuff. So it's like educating and, to dispel that, misconception about, what work is being done. So really educating them. And then kind of what was said, you're at a big, tech company, the scale of impact might be different. You're going to be one, tiny cog in a big machine, versus the kind of impact you can have here is going to be much, much larger. And I've worked at big tech companies as well, so I kind of know that. And then fundamentally, if you think about it, talent wants 4 things, right? Work, they want to have impact, right? What is the kind of work, and can I have a big impact? Am I working on the big enterprise strategies, and does my work matter, and is it going to make a difference to employees and customers and the community, right? So that's one. The second is culture. Like, is this a great culture? Am I going to have fun? Have fun while being the best at what I do. Am I treated well? Do I get decision-making rights, empowerment, all of those things, right? The third is learning and growth. Am I going to learn new things? Am I going to work on new things, new technologies where I'm going to learn new things? And is this going to lead to growth opportunities, right? And then fundamentally at the end, it's also comp and benefits. Now, ideally, you want to compete on all of those, but if you had to pick and choose, like where do you want to compete? Like comp and benefits, sure, that's not necessary. You'll attract a certain kind of people who'd only come for that, and that's. Do you really want to be playing that game, right? You definitely want to make sure the work, like of all those four things, I think the most important is the kind of work and culture, certainly, both of those. And I think growth opportunities are also important. Beyond that, I think if you're a new GCC, a couple of things that people get really excited about, that may not really be sustainable, but a couple of things if you did want to kind of lean into a little bit. One of it is a lot of people are really excited about working for a new GCC that's coming in. You want to be kind of the first 10 people, the first 100 people, and there is kind of pride and joy in kind of being in that startup and kind of seeing that growth. So a lot of people are really excited about that, and that helps with kind of the early stage of the GCC, right? The second is I think people really care, especially in Bangalore with the traffic here, people really care about having, flexibility around work. So if you can, if you have a flexible, I'm not saying you should have a flexible arrangement. I think you have to think about what you're doing globally. But if you do have a flexible arrangement, certainly kind of leverage that. The challenge, if you do that for a new GCC that is just starting up, that doesn't have a local culture, and if you're like remote, it's going to be really hard for you to build, culture. But, it's not about fully remote or fully in office. You're probably going to have something in between. So kind of, figure out what is the right flexibility that is globally consistent and relevant locally, and then kind of lean into that story. And to a certain extent, you're going to self-select, the kind of people who are going to come and join you for the story that you're telling the market.
Neil, anything to add?
So, at ANSR, we have this peculiar kind of problem because we're not only setting up GCCs for companies which are Fortune 500 but are not represented in India. So they're really big brands, but they just don't work out of India. And you need to create a positive narrative, a great narrative for the target audience to actually be attracted to this very large brand, but they don't know anything about it. And so you have to create the narrative of what do they do, why are they here, and therefore how do you kind of interrelate into this Legoization of the building blocks of the company. And we do this at scale because it could be a Fortune 500 company, it could be a company which is really small and not Fortune 500, but they don't have a brand presence in this country. And so I think it's about creating a narrative around what you're going to do. It's really, I think there is a certain virality that works, right? And so the first few employees who come on board, and I don't know really how it's done, but they spread a narrative of, yes, this company is walking the talk. Yes, there's good work out here. Yes, the kind of policy settings really are flexible, work for in favor of the employees. And so I think there's a combination of virality, an ecosystem that really talks to each other. But one other point that I have is that the communication medium today has completely changed. And you need to use non-linear social media because your target audience today is young. And so how you communicate this narrative of great work, culture, brand is really important to get out there through social media because they are not actually consuming any other kind of media for their thought processes on how to kind of get their next job. So really, I think those
use the right channels, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, very true. I mean, like all of you said, I mean, people want aspirational work. As one HR head was complaining, everybody only wants to do AI. But like Surendra said, but at least in cities like Bangalore, I think there's a recognition now that a GCC, you can be in a GCC and yet do phenomenal work. I mean, many years ago, the Citibank CEO said we are a technology company with a bank or something like that. And I think ever since then, so many GCCs and all that. I think at least in city, I don't know outside Bangalore what the feelings are, but I think there's a growing recognition that GCCs are all doing very cutting edge, including the newer ones are all starting off there. Great discussion. We've covered a lot of topics. Really fun doing this, and I think with the kind of for any new GCC coming in with the kind of people we have here today, anybody wants any advice, I'm sure it'll be easy to set up and get going. And I think we have a great, for India at least, I think this is a great story for the coming years. Thank you all so much for being part of this, and thank you to our audiences for listening to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sujit.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much.